Imagine a gentle breeze rustling through the hills of Galilee. The sun is warm, a crowd gathers. They have come to hear Jesus speak. He sits upon a mount overlooking the Sea of Galilee. His words echo across the centuries, timeless teachings of love, forgiveness, and hope. This is the Sermon on the Mount, a cornerstone of Christian faith. It is a guidebook for living a life that is pleasing to God, and a life that reflects His boundless love for us. Jesus speaks of a new kingdom, a kingdom not of this world. It is a kingdom of hearts transformed by grace. He speaks of humility, of mercy, of peacemaking. This sermon speaks to the deepest longings of the human heart. It offers a path to true happiness, not the fleeting joy of earthly possessions. It is a call to live differently, to love more deeply, to forgive more readily. The teachings of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount are as relevant today as they were 2,000 years ago. They challenge us, they inspire us, they offer a way of life that is countercultural. In a world often driven by greed and selfishness, Jesus calls us to a higher standard. He invites us to become peacemakers. He calls us to be light in the darkness. This sermon is not just for theologians or scholars. It is for everyday people like you and me. It is for those who long for a better world. It is for those who seek to live lives of meaning and purpose. In the Sermon on the Mount, we discover the heart of God. We find a path to a life filled with joy, peace, and love. Jesus begins his sermon with a series of blessings known as the Beatitudes. These blessings are not for the wealthy or the powerful. They are for the poor in spirit, the mournful, the meek, and the persecuted. These are the people who are often overlooked and forgotten. Blessed are the poor in spirit, Jesus says, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. To be poor in spirit means to recognize our need for God. It is a posture of humility. It is an acknowledgement that we are not self-sufficient. We need God's grace. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Jesus recognizes the reality of suffering in the world. He does not offer platitudes or easy answers. Instead, he offers comfort and hope, but he promises that God is near to the brokenhearted. The Beatitudes paint a picture of a kingdom that is upside down. In God's kingdom, it is not the proud and the powerful who are blessed. It is the humble, the merciful, the peacemakers. It is those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. It is those who are pure in heart. The Beatitudes are not just nice sayings. They are a call to action. They challenge us to examine our own hearts. They invite us to align our lives with the values of God's kingdom. They remind us that true blessedness is found not in material possessions or worldly success. It is found in a life lived in relationship with God. Perhaps the most challenging teaching in the Sermon on the Mount is the command to love our enemies. Love your enemies, Jesus says. Bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who mistreat you and persecute you. This is a radical concept. It goes against our natural instincts. When someone hurts us, our first impulse is often to retaliate. But Jesus calls us to a higher way. He calls us to break the cycle of hatred and violence. Loving our enemies does not mean condoning their actions. It does not mean becoming a doormat. It means choosing to respond with love instead of hate. It means praying for our enemies, seeking their good, and refusing to let bitterness take root in our hearts. This is not an easy command to follow. It requires God's grace, but it is in loving our enemies that we most clearly reflect the heart of God. It is in loving the unlovable that we experience the transformative power of God's love in our own lives. The teachings of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount are as relevant today as they were 2,000 years ago. We live in a world that is often characterized by conflict, division, and injustice. The message of the Sermon on the Mount offers a different way. It is a call to live lives of love, compassion, and peace. The Beatitudes remind us that true happiness is not found in material possessions or worldly success. It's found in a life lived in relationship with God and in service to others. The command to love our enemies challenges us to break the cycle of hatred and violence. It calls us to be peacemakers in a world that desperately needs peace. The teachings of the Sermon on the Mount are not always easy to follow. They require sacrifice. They require us to go against the grain of our culture. But they offer a path to a life of meaning, purpose, and joy. The Sermon on the Mount is a timeless treasure. It is a gift from God to humanity. May its message continue to inspire us to live lives of love, compassion, and peace. May we be known as people who are quick to forgive, slow to anger, and abounding in love. For in doing so, we reflect the very heart of God.